Hey everyone, you're here with Mark on Perfect Gardens TV. So, got another great question. What stage should calcium be added? Then, in what is the best form? So, first off, your plants use minerals throughout the entire process of growing, right? Let me actually rephrase this. The bacteria need minerals because they need coenzymes to create enzymes throughout the entire growth of the plant. And what the better question would be is at what point of growing do your plants utilize the most amount of calcium because the bacteria is using up the calcium to create enzymes off that calcium, right? And it needs a large amount of enzymes that are created from the calcium. And when should I really make sure? Because you're adding a certain amount of calcium so that the enzymatic production is happening. Well, you have to think about calcium is used for a number of different things. Just to think of a few things: cell wall structure, cell membrane stability and function, signal transduction. And so, what does that mean? It's involved in how the plant responds to stress, pathogens, and environmental signals like drought or things along those lines, right? Calcium is used for root and shoot growth, and it helps to prevent disorders like blossom end rot, tip burn, various things along those lines. So you have to think about that. Like, when is these functions happening the most, or like the most amount of time, and on what parts of the plants, right? Well, when the plant's in veg, it's growing, right? A lot of stem, a lot of new leaves. The leaves are constantly expanding with new leaves. And so through the whole process, there is tons of new cell wall structure happening, tons of cell membrane stability happening, tons of communication happening between the bacteria and the soil. So stress, pathogen, all these things are happening in the very beginning of the plant as the plant's transitioning. It's happening especially when the plant is doubling in size right after you send it into flowering for the first couple weeks, right? But then the plant begins to slightly slow down after week 4 into flowering, and the flowers begin to really form. So at that point, you have to think about this, right? Enzymes, once an enzyme is created, it can be used hundreds of times before it gets degraded. So if you've been giving calcium to your plants and you have a good bacterial system and you're not flushing your minerals away, then in your humic layer, there's going to be enzyme residuals from the calcium that's been given to your plants the entire time. So do you need to keep adding more calcium, right? Is there another mineral possibly that might play a little bit more beneficial for your plants if you give a little bit more of that substance, right? So then you start to think about the possibility of potassium and playing around potassium and how that could benefit the growth of flowers as you pass into week 5 of the flowering. So why am I saying all this? Am I saying that you don't need to give your plants calcium after week 4 or 5 in flowering? No, I'm not saying that, because when you look down at the bottom of your plants or anywhere new, like anywhere on your plant, even if the fan leaves are really big, they're still growing, they're still expanding all the way pretty much just about to the point where you harvest your plants, right? So the entire time, that's new cell structure, new cell membrane. Your plants are still fighting out pathogens, still fighting out bud rot. You're still going to need calcium through this entire process, but the amount you're going to need to give can slightly reduce after week 5 into flowering, because if you have a strong humic layer, there's going to be enough enzymes that have been already created. And as long as you don't interrupt your bacteria doing their job and you're not flushing out all the trace minerals and all the chemistry that's locked up in your humic layer, there should be enough residual of the enzymes from calcium to take you into flowering. You're going to still give some more though, obviously, because your bacteria are going to still keep producing new enzymes so you don't run out of them. So let's get back over into what type of calcium you should give to your plants. Well, there's a number of different ones, right? You could use calcium nitrate. Why would you want to do that? Well, you might want to give calcium and nitrogen to your plants. Well, when would you need calcium and nitrogen? Well, nitrogen is essential for everything, but most people think about nitrogen as important for new growth in the very beginnings, right? And they're correct. Well, you might want to use calcium nitrate because you feel like your plants need calcium and nitrate, and it's water soluble and it's going to be available to your plants quickly. And you might use this potentially in the earlier stages of your plant growth because you feel like that's what's lacking. Another one could be calcium carbonate, and those are things like eggshells or limestone, things along those lines. That's going to raise your pH. And why is that as well? Because when it breaks down, it releases carbon dioxide, and when it releases increases carbon dioxide, that raises the pH of your soil system. Same thing with your RO water. If you leave it out, it's going to collect a CO2 from the environment, raising the pH of your water. Let's say you use calcium acetate. I just released a video talking about calcium acetate and how to make it, but let's say you use that. Well, that's going to become water soluble. If you've already have burned off all the carbon dioxide is evaporated away through the chemical reaction of taking your eggshells and putting it into vinegar, and the CO2 is already evaporated away. And so now you have calcium acetate crystals. That's water soluble, and it's not going to increase the pH because there's no carbon dioxide being released. So that might be a great solution to provide calcium at any stage of your plants, because maybe you feel that's what you're lacking and you'd use it later in your crop because you're not adding calcium like nitrogen to your crop. So another one, for example, is calcium sulfate, right? A lot of people always talk about how calcium sulfate improves your soil structure, but why does it increase your soil structure? Well, that's because it's a sulfate, and bacteria love sulfates. Okay, it's just 100% calcium sulfate, so it's not going to affect the pH of your soil. And because the bacteria love the sulfates, they're going to go in there and really just help increase your soil structure. The last and final thing, which is actually where I would recommend you start, is to utilize drops of balance and treat your water, whether you're using tap water, RO water, whatever it is. Make whatever is in your water 100% available in the beginning before you start putting yourself through all this extra work to add something that's already in your water. It's just not available because there's not enough trace minerals. I hope this video was helpful. Have a great grow up there.